Well, hello, Lafayette Federated Church. I am excited to join you guys for this Sanctity of Human Life Sunday event. As you know, this past Friday, January 22nd, is the sad anniversary of Roe v. Wade. It's 48 years that we have had legalized abortion in the United States. And, today we hear a lot about the idea of social justice, right? I mean, this term is used amongst both non-Christians and even Christians. And it's interesting because when the term social justice is brought up, oftentimes people have in their mind things like human trafficking or poverty or homelessness or racial injustice, which, by the way, I'm not trying to suggest that any of these are not important topics that we as Christians should care about. We absolutely should. But curiously absent from the social justice issue list is the subject of abortion. But if what we believe about abortion is true, that abortion kills an innocent human being, then abortion should rise to the top of the social justice issue list. Why? Because abortion is still legal in all 50 states throughout all 9 months of pregnancy and for virtually any reason. And according to Planned Parenthood's own data, and remember, Planned Parenthood is the number one provider of abortion in America. According to their own data, 2,363 unborn children are killed each day in America alone. Okay, the United States basically, there's only 9 other countries that have a higher abortion rate than the United States. Okay, this is nearly the number of people that died on September 11th. Okay, and this yet happens every single day. Now, this alone is upsetting, but here's what makes me very angry. According to that same data, we know that 27% of people who are having these abortions identify themselves as Catholic. 38% identify themselves as Protestant. That means Christians are killing their own children. The most dangerous place for a baby to be in America today is resting in her own mother's womb. And so that's why I want to talk to you today about how we can make that place safer for unborn children by making abortion unthinkable. Now, I know there might be a tendency for some people to say, oh, Alan, that's so sweet and touching. You want to save babies, you want to save unborn children. But Alan, come on. I mean, no one ever changes their mind, right? Not an abortion. Right? This is far too much of an emotional subject, and people are entrenched on one side or the other of this debate, and you never see people change their minds on this, right? That's what I typically hear, and perhaps maybe you're thinking the same thing. I completely disagree with that assessment. In fact, I know people change their minds because I've been involved in engaging people on the subject of abortion, and have seen people change their minds. And I regularly train people in the art of pro-life persuasion, even, not only adults, but even high school and college students. And then we take these people out into the streets, public areas like downtown Portland or downtown Atlanta, downtown Los Angeles, and we engage people in conversation about abortion. And we see these students changing minds of people about the subject of abortion. The key is you have to have the right tactics, okay? So yeah, generally speaking, people might not change their minds on abortion, but with the right tactics, I believe you can change minds. And so today what I want to do is present to you 3 tasks, okay, that will help you to make abortion unthinkable in your sphere of influence, okay? So I want to begin by showing you my presentation here, or the slides, okay? So making abortion unthinkable, here's where we are, of course. And the first task is going to be to show there's actually only one question to resolve in the abortion debate. Okay, so this is task 1. There's only one question to resolve in the abortion debate, all right? Now, people rarely talk about abortion. And what I mean by that is when you get in a conversation with someone, maybe who's an abortion choice advocate, what you'll find is, although you might start talking about abortion, rather quickly, the conversation will naturally tangent to some related but different subject, So the conversation will naturally tangent to back alley abortions or unwantedness or choice and privacy or financial hardship or rape and incest, okay? Now, if you're like any normal person, you'll probably be thinking to yourself, wow, how can I be effective at speaking about abortion or changing people's minds if I have to know everything there is to know about all of these related topics? Okay, choice and privacy, unwantedness, and so on and so forth. And I would agree with you. I would feel intimidated by that prospect, because I can't possibly know everything there is to know about all of those subjects, as well as many others that the conversation could naturally lead towards. Okay. And so my suggestion to you, again, going back to this key important tactic, is to not allow the conversation to go there. I mean, it might start that way, but I want you to redirect the conversation back to one key question, because this one key question, in a sense, trumps all these other related subjects, right? And that one key question that I want you to go back and focus on is this key question. What is, there we go. This one key question, what is the unborn? What is the unborn? This is the key question that I want you to focus your conversation, or if you need to, redirect your conversation back to, all right? So let me give you an illustration as to how I know this is the key question, right? Imagine for a moment you're in your kitchen and you're doing your dishes, right? And imagine also that you have a 6-year-old son, all right? Or if you're younger in this audience, right? Imagine you have a 6-year-old brother, okay? But I'll just pretend here we're talking about a 6-year-old son, okay? So you're doing the dishes and you hear your 6-year-old son come up behind you, okay? So your back is turned to your 6-year-old son, but you hear him say, "Mommy," or "Daddy, can I kill this?" Now, before you can answer his question, what question are you gonna ask him? What is it? What is it, right? So imagine you turn around from doing the dishes and you look and you see your 6-year-old son and he's holding a daddy long leg spider in his hand, right? Now, what's your answer going to be? Sure, go ahead, kill it, whatever, you take one leg, I'll take another leg. Let's pull that sucker in two, right? Now, what if you turn around and you notice your 6-year-old son is holding, let's say, the neighbor's cat? What's your answer going to be, right? You're probably thinking, depends on whether you're a dog lover or not, okay? All right, let's make it a little bit more obvious. How about you turn around and you notice your 6-year-old son is holding his little sister by the neck? What's your answer going to be? It's like, son, you need counseling, right? Let's go to therapy right now, right? Notice what this illustration shows. Whether or not it's moral to kill something depends entirely upon what it is we're killing. You can't answer the question, can I kill this, until you first answer the question, what is it, right? This is why I say this is the key question that I want you to focus on, right? And so here is the key point that follows from that, all right? If you ask the question, what is it? And it turns out the unborn is not a human being, then no justification for abortion is necessary, right? However, if the unborn is a human being, then no justification for abortion is adequate, right? Think about it for a moment. If the unborn's not a human being, go ahead, kill it. What's the big deal, right? If it's no different than having your tooth pulled or your tonsils removed or your appendix taken out, then go ahead, have the abortion. You don't have to give any arguments in favor of abortion. Go ahead, have the abortion. But if through your scientific or philosophical analysis, you discover that the unborn is a human being just like you and me, well, then there's no justification for killing an innocent human being just like you and me. And so no justification for abortion would be adequate, okay? So this is why I say this is the key question. What is the unborn? If it's not a human being, go ahead and have an abortion. If it is a human being, then wait, there's no justification for killing an innocent human being like you and me, okay? So let me show you though, what are the typical defenses for abortion that you'll hear kind of on the street, if you will, all right? Most offenses for abortion completely sidestep the question, what is the unborn, right? People say, well, women have a right to choose, or women have a right to privacy, or many poor women can't afford another child, or no child should be unwanted, or women have a right to do whatever they want with their own bodies, which, like I said, if the unborn is not a human being, those aren't very controversial at all, of course, right? But notice all of these common defenses that you would hear sort of on the street completely sidestep the question, what is the unborn? In fact, worse, I'd suggest to you that they presume that the unborn is not a human being, right? But I want you to think for a moment, what if we were to change that presumption? What if we were to change the presumption that the unborn is not a human being to the unborn is a human being, right? Then I want you to notice that those typical defenses for abortion would completely fall apart, right? Let's just say the unborn is a human being. Let's go to this first defense. Women have a right to choose. Well, yeah, of course women have a right to choose, but they don't have a right to choose to kill an innocent human being. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. Well, women have a right to privacy. Well, absolutely, women have a right to privacy. But if the unborn is a human being, then you can't kill a innocent human being so long as you do it in the privacy of your own home or in the privacy of a doctor's clinic. Right? Many poor women can't afford another child, which might be true, absolutely. But if the unborn is a human being, then you can't kill an innocent human being simply because you can't afford to care for them. Right? So notice all of these typical defenses that you'd hear kind of on the street completely fall apart if you change the presumption from the unborn is not a human being to the unborn is a human being, right? Now, again, I haven't yet argued that the unborn is a human being. I'm just simply pointing out that the key question is, what is the unborn? Because if it's not a human being, then of course all these defenses are legitimate. There's no reason why you shouldn't have an abortion. But if the unborn is a human being, like you and me, then none of those justifications justify killing an innocent human being, okay? So that's why I say this is the key question. You need to show that's the key question, what is the unborn, all right? Now, we can turn to task number 2. And the second task is to show that the unborn is a human being just like you and me, and to show that that actually is the case from the moment of conception, okay? Now, what I want to do in order to demonstrate that is look to the science of embryology, right? Now, I know probably most of us are Christians, and we would say, well, actually the Bible makes a pretty compelling case that all life is valuable, even unborn life, right? But as you probably realize, not everybody you talk to is going to consider, the Bible to be an authority, right? So we need to sometimes offer non-biblical evidences or reasons why our claims are true. And it turns out that the science of embryology is so compelling and so decisive that I think in this case, it warrants the very strong word proves. Because normally I wouldn't say anything, I wouldn't say I can prove God exists or I can prove that we have a soul. I might say we have good evidence that God exists or that we have good evidence that a soul is real, but I wouldn't say prove. But in the case of the science of embryology, it is so powerful and so decisive, I believe it actually does prove that the unborn is a human being. And here's what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that the science of embryology proves that the unborn is a living being, meaning it's alive, that the unborn is a distinct being, meaning it's a unique individual, not merely a part of the mother's body, and that the unborn is a human type of being, not a potential human or some other type of being. And if I can show all these 3 things are true from the science of embryology, I believe that we'll have shown that the unborn from the moment of conception is a human being just like you and me, all right? So let's take a look at the first part. Do we have evidence that the unborn is a living being? Do we have evidence that the unborn is alive? Now, I think in this case, it's perhaps the most obvious and least controversial piece of evidence, right? And that is that the unborn, yes, it is a living being, right? Now, when biologists look at something and they want to know, is this thing that we're looking at alive or not alive? They ask, does it meet the biological criteria for life? And there's typically 3 characteristics. Does it grow? Does it respond to stimuli? And does it metabolize nutrients and convert it to energy? right? And if this thing they're looking at does all three things, then they can conclude, yes, this thing is alive. Well, it turns out the unborn does all three things. The unborn grows, it responds to stimuli, and it metabolizes nutrients, like it takes in food and converts it into energy. And so therefore we can conclude that the unborn is a living being, right? So, that's not super controversial, but still an essential first point, all right? But is this living thing just a part of the mother's body, like her appendix or her liver or her eyeball or her bones or her brain? Or is it a unique individual being that is separate and distinct from the mother's body? Okay. Now, I believe there are a number of characteristics that are different from between the mother and the unborn being. Okay, that give us evidence to conclude that the unborn is a unique individual being. Okay, so let's take the first one: fingerprints. Right, the unborn has unique fingerprints that are different than the mother's fingerprints. Right. And this seems to be good evidence to think that the unborn is a unique individual being, not the same as the mother or part of her body, right? When you think about, like, in a court of law, right, fingerprints are used to determine and distinguish between one person and another, right? So that's good evidence right there. Another second piece of evidence is that the unborn's DNA is different than the DNA of the mother or the father, for that matter, okay? So the rest of the mother's body has her own DNA, like her bones, her heart, her brain. Those are all have the same DNA as the rest of the mother's body. But the unborn's body has different DNA, which again is very conclusive evidence that the unborn is a unique individual being, not merely part of her body. And again, if we think about a court of law, DNA evidence usually is decisive in delineating between one person and another. Right? Circulatory system or blood type, right? The unborn's blood type could be different than that of the mother's blood type. It could be the same, but it could also be different. But more significantly here, notice the unborn's heart and circulatory system is completely different and separate from the mother's heart and circulatory system. And this, by the way, brings up also a rather interesting point. Inside the placenta, where the blood of the mother and the blood of the unborn come very, very close together, what you'll discover to know is that they don't mix, okay? The mother's blood does not just directly connect to the unborn's circulatory system, okay? But here's what's interesting. If there was a problem, an abnormality of sorts inside the placenta, where the blood of the mother and the blood of the unborn were to connect and mother's brain, though, the mother doesn't have two brains, right? Different brain, right? Different gender. The unborn that the mother could be carrying could be a boy, right? Let's see here. What else we got? The unborn can be conceived outside of the mother's body. In other words, you could have sperm and egg brought together in a petri dish in a laboratory, okay? sperm and egg can be brought together to start a human being or start this being and have it grow outside the mother's body for a time, a week or two, I don't know, and then later implant that inside the mother's body, which again tells you it can't be a part of the mother's body if it's can begin its existence outside of the mother's body and grow for a time and just later be implanted, right? And the third thing I'd say, I'm not going to go back to my PowerPoint right now, is that the unborn can also have a different ethnicity than that of the mother. Through when gosh, what do you call it? When a woman gestates another person's baby, I can't think of the name of that concept. Anyways, but you know how like women can kind of rent out their wombs, right? Well, you could have, for example, a Swedish woman carrying a Chinese child, okay, inside her, you know, through you know, kind of renting out her womb, right? Well, if she's a Swedish woman and you have a Chinese child, how could it be that that is part of her body when it's a completely different ethnicity, right? So again, we have all these pieces of evidence to suggest that the unborn is not a part of the mother's body, but a unique individual being that is, yes, inside her body, but a separate individual being, okay? Okay, so what we have here then is we've made our first 2 points. The unborn is a living being. Second thing is the unborn is a unique individual being. So if the unborn then is a living, unique individual being, the third question then is, well, what kind of being is it, right? Is it, as you see here pictured, an elephant being? Is it a dolphin being? Is it a human being? Is it a dog being? Because every living thing has an identity. It's something, okay? We in science, they call it taxonomy, but it's the process of ordering all of plants and animals and giving them kind of a biological address, okay? So every living thing is something and not nothing, right? So what kind of being is this unborn thing? Well, there are two ways that we can answer this question, okay? The first is by just simply looking at the DNA genetic signature of the unborn. In other words, if you could take a needle inside a pregnant woman and take a sample, pull a sample from the unborn and test its DNA, the DNA signature of it, it would come back with the result that the unborn is a human type of being, okay? In fact, that would happen every time, right? Now, that would be compelling evidence, but here's the problem. Most of us don't have the ability or the access to have to run such a test, right? And so there's another way that we can determine what kind of being the unborn is, and that is through what is called the principle of biogenesis. Okay, this is something that Louis Pasteur helped develop back in the 19th century. But the principle of biogenesis is just a fancy term for a very basic concept which we all know, and that is this: living things reproduce after their own kind, right? Living things reproduce after their own kind. In other words, if you have two dogs and they come together and mate, they're going to produce another what? A dog, right? You have two giraffes that come together and mate. They're going to produce another giraffe, okay? This is how the principle of biogenesis works, right? And so, for example, my wife, when she was pregnant, we wondered whether we're going to have a boy or a girl. But notice we didn't wonder whether we're going to have a human or not, okay? In fact, when my wife was pregnant with our second child, and that second child also turned out to be a human, we're like, oh, wow, 2 humans in a row. What are the chances? This is amazing. Like, this wasn't surprising to us because we're humans, my wife and I, and so our offspring will also be human as well. So this principle of biogenesis produces for us a very practical test. If you want to know what kind of being the unborn is, all you have to do is ask a very simple question. And that question is, what are its parents? What are its parents? And if the parents are human, then the offspring or the unborn from the union of those two parents is also going to be human as well. It is scientifically impossible for two humans to come together and mate and produce something that is not human, but then at some point later becomes one. It's just scientifically impossible, okay? And so this is why I say we have very powerful evidence from the principle of biogenesis that the unborn is a human type of being, okay? So notice then what we've concluded and shown from the science of embryology. We've shown that the unborn is a living being, it's a distinct being, and it's a human being. And all three of these things are true from the moment of conception. Therefore, we can conclude that the unborn is a human being, just like you and me, okay? And again, this is coming simply from the science of embryology, okay? Now, what I want to do is tell you about a situation where we had a person here. Let me show you a picture of her. So many of you who are my age or a little bit older probably are familiar with a woman named Kathy Ireland. She used to be an actress and a model, and then she later in life became like a business owner and so on and so forth. And she became a pro-life activist, a pro-life Christian. And so many years she wrote a book called Powerful Inspirations. And one of the chapters in her book is about abortion because she's pro-life and she wants to argue against abortion. Now, she was invited on a TV show called Hannity and Combs. It was a TV show on Fox News where you had a conservative named Sean Hannity and a liberal guy named Alan Combs, and they would bring up political issues and debate them from a conservative and liberal position, okay? So she was going to be invited on that show, and of course, Alan Combs, who was the liberal guy, was the one who was going to, for the most part, engage her because they hold different views on this, right? Now, she came to us to get trained in the art of pro-life persuasion, and we were able to train her in exactly the same tactics and material that I've just presented to you. And we did some more, but these are the same things that we taught her as well. And then she took this material and went on that TV show and used this material on this national television show. So I want to show you a video clip of her using this material, and you can take a look at how it went. Okay, let's take a look.
Us now, Kathy Ireland, author of the new book, Powerful Inspirations, 8 Lessons That'll Change Your Life. Kathy, welcome to Hannity and Combs. What do you think about doing a political show like this?
Oh, I think it's great. I love you guys. Thank you for having me.
Do you watch our show?
It's great. I do.
Gee, I wonder which side you agree with. Now, I'm guessing you're pretty conservative, but you were telling me off the air you have a very strong liberal position.
You know, I don't like labels. They cause us to dismiss one another, assuming we know all there is to know. I'm conservative on some issues, and I'm liberal on some issues.
Give me an example where you're liberal.
I'm very liberal when it comes to protecting the human rights of the unborn.
All right, now you see, I'm very conservative.
Well said.
I'm very conservative,
Kathy,
and I feel the government has no place in having anything to say about what women do with their bodies concerning that. So I've got the conservative position on that.
Is it her? I didn't want to be pro-choice, but when you ask powerful questions, you get powerful answers. That's one of the chapters in the book, powerful answers.
Right.
And the evidence I see tells me that the unborn is a human being. If you can show me any evidence that the unborn is not a human being.
When does it become? We're not going to settle this here tonight, I don't think. But we, you know, I mean, is it a conception? Is that when it happens?
At the moment of conception, a new life comes into being with the complete genetic blueprints. The fingerprint is determined, the blood type is determined, the sex is determined.
So
what kind of life is it? According to the law of biogenesis.
You would deny women the right to then choose what to do at that point.
I will always fight for women's rights. I have been an activist in women's rights, and I will continue to be.
But she doesn't have the right to choose what to do with her body.
It's not her body. The baby this woman is carrying could very well have a different blood type than her. If it's a male child, the baby, it's not a part of her body, but it resides within her body. I don't want to dwell just on this issue. We're not going to. People are not going to come to agreement on this all of a sudden on this very divisive issue. And I'm sad that it's
However, let me ask you.
Okay, so there you have Kathy Ireland using this content on a national television show, and so part of my point in showing this to you is to show you that this isn't just academic material or just kind of in theory. Like, we actually use this content. Other people use it. We use it. And so it can be very, very effective. All right. Notice, by the way, also, there's nothing that Ellen Combs said that refuted her presentation of evidence that the unborn is not a part of the mother's body, that it's a human being, and so on and so forth. So very, very noteworthy. Okay. There are also, we also have other kinds of evidence that what we're saying is true. So let me show this to you here. Standard college, university level textbooks in embryology agree with us that the unborn is a human being, right? So for example, this is before we are born. Notice what they say. The zygote formed by the union of an oocyte, which means egg, and sperm, is the beginning of a new human being, right? So the zygote is the first stage of development. So right when sperm and egg meet, what they're saying is you have a new human being, right? Here's another college level textbook, Human Embryology and Teratology. It says, just looking at the bold section, a new genetically distinct human organism is formed when the chromosomes of the male and female pronuclei blend in the oocyte, blend in the egg, right? So again, new human being. David Boonin, who, by the way, is a philosopher, one of the top philosophers who defends abortion. In his book, Defending Abortion, notice what he says. He says, again, the bold section, a human fetus, after all, is simply a human being at a very early stage in his or her development, right? Peter Singer, also an Australian bioethicist, diehard abortion rights activist, diehard animal rights activist, doesn't agree with us as Christians on virtually anything, okay? But listen to what he says. There is no doubt that from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is a human being, okay? Notice, none of these people disagrees with our take on this, that the unborn is a human being, all right? So now what I want to do that I've shown you looking at science and evidence here, you've kind of learned with your mind that the unborn is a human being. I want you to now see with your eyes to allow you to confirm what your mind has just learned. And I want to show you a video of what's called an embryoscopy. Now, this is not like an ultrasound. And by the way, it's not graphic at all. It's just when they take a small camera with a little tiny flashlight and insert it inside a woman, inside the amniotic sac, to see the developing human being inside of the woman, okay? It's just a short clip. Let me take show you here, get over to the screen share. Let's take a look at what an unborn human being looks like at just 9 weeks development, okay? Just 9 weeks development. That is just remarkable. I've seen that video like 1,000 times, but it's just amazing what you see. Just at 9 weeks development, what you have is clearly what looks like a little miniature human being, you know, floating around. You can see the umbilical cord, you know, at one point it looks like he's putting his hand up to, like, you know, keep that flashlight out of my face. You know, it's been dark in here for 9 weeks and now you got this big flashlight in his face, right? But again, this just allows you to kind of confirm with your eyes what your mind's learned, that the unborn is a human being. Okay, so notice we've completed 2 tasks. Number 1, we've shown that there's only one question to resolve in the abortion debate. That is, what is the unborn? And then the second task is to show that the unborn is a human being, which is in essence to answer that first question, what is the unborn? And notice we've shown that the unborn is a human being from the science of embryology, okay? So we have one final task, and that is to show that all human beings are valuable, show that all human beings are valuable, because you might be asking yourself the question, wait a minute, if all of these people are agreeing the unborn is a human being, like even abortion choice advocates like Peter Singer and David Boonin and everybody, how is it that they can still argue for abortion, okay? And I'm going to show you how they do so, okay? Now, this is the moral logic of our view, the pro-life view, okay? We say premise 1, it's wrong to kill innocent human beings. Premise 2, abortion kills an innocent human being. Conclusion, therefore abortion is wrong, okay? Now, this, by the way, is what we call in philosophy or logic a valid deductive argument, which means if premise 1 is true and premise 2 is true, then the conclusion logically follows by necessity. It has to be true, okay? Well, which of the two premises is the more controversial one? Well, obviously, premise number 2, abortion kills an innocent human being, right? Most people will agree with you and I, but with premise 1, that it's wrong to kill an innocent human being, right? If they don't agree with you about that, they don't need an argument. They need a jail cell, right? They got other issues, right? So most people will agree with premise 1. They won't agree with premise 2, but notice what we've just done. We've just shown from the science of embryology that the unborn is a human being from the moment of conception. So therefore, premise 2 has been demonstrated to be true. Therefore, since premise 1 and premise 2 are true, the conclusion logically follows. Abortion is wrong, okay? Now, here's how Peter Singer and David Boonin, and many years ago, I debated a feminist at a university here in San Diego. She's a women's studies professor. We debated abortion. This is how she also sidestepped my evidence, right? She said, yeah, I agree with Alan's evidence that the unborn is a human being, but we should still allow for abortion. And here's what virtually most scholars will do. They'll say, look, it's not wrong to kill innocent human beings. It's wrong to kill innocent human persons. And abortion might kill an innocent human being, but it doesn't kill a person. Therefore, abortion is not wrong, okay? So what they're saying is the unborn might be a human being, but it's not a person, okay? Now, what question pops into your mind the moment you hear someone or hear me say this? It probably is the question, what's the difference, right? What's the difference between a human being and a human person? And I agree, that is the key question, right? Now, the abortion choice advocates must have an answer to this question because they've just made the incredible claim that there exists a group of human beings out there in the world that we can kill with impunity simply because they're not persons. Really? Well, man, who are these human beings that are not persons that we can kill? Because that sounds like an interesting sport perhaps to take up, like who are these human beings that aren't persons, right? Now, what they will do to answer this question is they'll start to give you a list. They'll say, well, yeah, it's a human being, but it's not a person because persons are aware of their own existence, and an unborn is not aware of its own existence, a born person is, or yeah, the unborn's a human being, but it's not aware of moral categories, and born persons are aware of moral categories, but the unborn is not, yes, the unborn's a human being, but, let's see what I'll say. It's dependent upon another person for its existence, the mother, and born persons are not, So they'll just give you a list of qualities or characteristics that they believe disqualifies the unborn from personhood, okay? Now, you can take all of those qualities and characteristics that they use to disqualify the unborn from personhood and put them in an acronym, okay? Or you can remember them in these 4 categories: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency, okay? In other words, yes, it's true, the unborn is different from a born person in these 4 ways: size, level of development, environment, degree of dependency. But as I'm about to show you, none of them are relevant to the question of what makes a human being valuable. Moreover, none of them should disqualify an unborn human being from personhood, okay? And so you can remember these 4 with the acronym SLED, S-L-E-D, okay? Again, these are 4 ways in which the unborn is different than a born person. But as I'm about to show you, none of them justify disqualifying the unborn from being a person. Let's take a look at each one real quickly, right? The first one in the acronym SLED is S, right, which stands for size or physical appearance. Okay, yes, it's true. The unborn is smaller than a born person. But why would that disqualify you from being a valuable person, right? Many years ago, you see pictured here, the Guinness Book of World Records brought together the tallest man in the world and the shortest man in the world, okay? Sultan Kozan's like over 8 feet, while Chandra is just under 2 feet tall, right? Is Chandra less of a person or less valuable simply because he's smaller than Sultan? No, of course not. They're both equally valuable because how big they are is irrelevant to their value. Well, guess what? The unborn just happens to be also still smaller than Chandra. So can we disqualify the unborn from being valuable simply because they're smaller if we don't disqualify Chandra from being valuable because he's smaller? No, we don't, right? That's inconsistent because size is irrelevant when it comes to the question of your status as a person or whether you're valuable or not. Let's take a look at the L in the SLED test. That stands for level of development, okay? Yes, it's true. The unborn is less developed than a born human being. But why does level of development somehow disqualify you from being valuable or a person, right? By the way, that picture there is my son when he was just a month old. Oh, he's so cute. So much more quiet too than now that he's a 15-year-old, right? Right, but think about it. Yeah, of course the unborn are less developed than a born person. But think about this for a moment. My daughter, okay, when she was 10 years old, was less developed than a 15-year-old girl because my daughter's reproductive organs hadn't even fully matured and developed to where she could get pregnant, whereas a 15-year-old girl had. Okay, so my daughter is less developed than a 15-year-old girl. Does that mean my daughter is less valuable or less of a person than a 15-year-old girl simply because she's less developed? Absolutely not. Well, then how can the unborn, who happens to be just less developed than my daughter, then be disqualified simply because the unborn is less developed? That doesn't make any sense, right? We don't disqualify people or value them more based on their level of development. So why should we disqualify the unborn for simply being less developed, right? Then the E in the SLED test stands for environment. Yes, it's true. The unborn is in a different environment, in a different location than a born human being. But clearly where one is has no bearing on who one is, right? When people travel in space and they're in a spacesuit or they swim underwater with scuba gear, right? They're in a different environment, a different location. Has their value changed? Do we disqualify them as persons simply because of their change in location or their change in their environment? Absolutely not, right? So then how could a 7-inch journey down the birth canal magically transform a non-valuable human being into a valuable person? Like, that doesn't make any sense. All that's changed is location. So that can't be a relevant factor for their status as a person. And then finally, the D in the SLED test stands for degree of dependency. Yes, it's true. The unborn is more dependent upon its mother for survival. No question about that. But why is being dependent upon someone else all of a sudden disqualify you from being valuable, right? There's lots of people in hospitals that are dependent upon doctors and machines and medicine for their survival. Or there's lots of elderly people who are dependent upon their adult children to care for them, right? We don't disqualify them from being valuable. Or imagine you're at a pool party and you're the last person to leave the backyard area to go inside to have some food. And you're the only one outside now. you notice a 1-year-old fall into the deep end of a swimming pool, okay? Could you look at that 1-year-old and say, well, young person or young human, your life is entirely dependent upon me for your survival. So because of that, you don't qualify as a valuable person. So I'm just going to go ahead and eat my pizza. It's like, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's right. It is crazy because your status as a person is irrelevant. Your status as a person is not dependent upon how dependent upon you are on someone else, right? Yes, the unborn is dependent upon their mothers for survival, but we don't disqualify born people who are dependent upon others. So why should we disqualify the unborn because they're dependent upon others, right? So again, notice, yes, the unborn is different than a born person in size, level, development, environment, degree, dependency, those 4 ways. But none of them are relevant distinctions that justify disqualifying the unborn while protecting born people, because those differences of SLED are found even amongst born people. We don't disqualify born people for those reasons, so we shouldn't disqualify the unborn, okay? So I think then what's really going on here is that abortion is simply an unjust form of discrimination, okay? There are, now, like, notice I say unjust discrimination because some discrimination is legitimate, right? We discriminate against blind people and don't give them driver's licenses or airline pilot licenses, right? We discriminate against children and don't give them access to firearms, right? So some discrimination is legitimate, but abortion is a form of unjust discrimination, okay? Because what we have here, and we have a history of this in the world, where there are many examples in our own human history where we've taken a class of human beings and we've disqualified them from being valuable based on an arbitrary characteristic, okay? So take, for example, African Americans, right? We in the United States discriminated against African Americans. Notice, they were a class of human beings. Nobody denied that, but they were disqualified from being valuable persons based on an arbitrary characteristic. What characteristic? Their skin color. Why? So that we could kidnap them and enslave them, right? We also had discrimination against the Jews in World War II. Notice they were also a class of human beings, but they were disqualified from being valuable based on an arbitrary characteristic. What characteristic? Their ethnicity. Why? So we could experiment and exterminate them. And today we are seeing the same kind of discrimination happening against unborn children. Because again, notice they are a class of human beings. Nobody denies they're not human, but they are being disqualified from being valuable based on an arbitrary characteristic. What characteristic? They're too small, they're in the wrong location, they're too dependent upon their mothers for survival, or they're not developed enough, right? So we are seeing the same kind of unjust discrimination happening with abortion. But when you realize what's incredible is that our view, the pro-life view, is the non-discriminatory, inclusive view, right? I mean, just think of the language of our culture, right? Our culture is repulsed at discrimination, at lack of diversity, at not being inclusive. Well, guess what? The pro-life view is the inclusive view, because our view says that no human being, regardless of size, level of development, race, gender, or place of residence, should be excluded from the human community. Our view of humanity is inclusive, wide open to all, especially to those who are small, vulnerable, and defenseless. So notice, our view is the inclusive view. It's the abortion choice advocates' view who say, oh, no, we are not inclusive. We don't uphold the diversity of all human beings. They're discriminatory. It's incredible. But our view is the inclusive view, okay? So I will stop there, and I know we will be having hopefully a time of live Q&A where we can discuss some of these. So I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on making abortion unthinkable. 3 tasks to make abortion unthinkable. Show there's only one question to resolve. Show that the unborn is a human being. And then number 3, show that all human beings are valuable. Thanks, and hope to talk to you soon.